Have you ever considered how the vast, intricate world of financial markets navigates and even embraces specific ethical or religious principles?
It's a really compelling area, isn't it, where, ancient wisdom meets modern investing.
Exactly. And today we're taking a deep dive into exactly that, exploring how the world of investing aligns with Sharia law.
Yeah, our mission for this deep dive is really to unpack the intricate methodology behind the Dow Jones Islamic Market Indices.
Okay.
Our primary source is the detailed 2024 methodology document from S&P Dow Jones Indices. It meticulously lays out the rules, the criteria, and the governance that guide these unique financial benchmarks.
Right. So our goal is to give you a shortcut, basically, to understanding what makes a stock Sharia compliant, how these significant global indices are built and maintained, and why this particular approach to indexing is so vital to a large segment of investors around the world.
And you might find some of the specifics quite surprising.
I bet. So where do we start? The foundation.
At its core, the objective of the Dow Jones Islamic Market Indices is, well, straightforward enough: measure the performance of Sharia-compliant stocks across various global markets.
Okay.
But what's truly fascinating is the rigorous, multi-layered process that defines compliance.
So Sharia compliance isn't just a general guideline here. It's a very specific, detailed set of rules. How are those rules actually applied in practice? And who are the ultimate authorities defining them for these indices?
That's where the meticulous process begins. So stocks are subjected to rigorous rules-based screens.
Right.
S&P Dow Jones Indices actually contracts with a company called Ratings Intelligence Partners, or RI. They're a London, Kuwait-based consulting firm.
Ah, RI, okay.
Yeah, their role is to provide the actual Sharia screens and filter the stocks. But RI doesn't make these decisions in a vacuum,
Right, they can't just decide on their own.
Exactly. They work directly with the Sharia Supervisory Board. That's a board comprised of Islamic scholars.
Okay, actual scholars.
Yes. These scholars interpret complex business issues and recommend actions for the indices. It ensures a deep, authoritative understanding of Sharia law guides the entire process.
That makes perfect sense. You need that robust academic and practical vetting. So before stock even gets considered, it has to pass some initial hurdles, starting with sector-based screens.
That's right.
Like a no-go list of business activities deemed inconsistent with Sharia law by that supervisory board.
Precisely.
Can you give us a sense of what's on that list?
Absolutely. This list includes specific activities like alcohol, tobacco, recreational cannabis products,
Okay.
and anything pork-related, whether that's food or even businesses like hotels and restaurants where a significant portion of the revenue comes from pork.
Right.
Conventional financial services like traditional banking, insurance, mortgage finance, those are also out.
Naturally, given the prohibition on interest.
Correct. Also, companies primarily involved in weapons and defense, and even certain types of entertainment. Think casinos, gambling, pornography, or specific forms of music are excluded.
That's quite a comprehensive list. But here's something I found really interesting. They have this non-permissible revenue, total revenue 5% tolerance rule.
Ah, yes, the 5% rule.
Yeah, one might expect absolute zero tolerance, but this allows for a very minor kind of incidental amount of non-compliant revenue. What's the thinking there? Is it just practical?
That's a great observation, and yes, it highlights the pragmatic nature of applying these principles in a complex global economy.
Okay.
This 5% rule basically acknowledges that in today's interconnected business world, it's incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, for any large corporation to have zero incidental revenue from non-compliant sources.
Like how? Give me an example.
Well, think about a compliant tech company. It might have some minimal interest income on its cash reserves, right?
Sure.
Or maybe a tiny percentage of its sales comes from a subproduct that inadvertently touches upon a restricted area. The Sharia Supervisory Board interprets this as a necessary flexibility. It allows otherwise compliant businesses to be included, focusing on their primary operations and revenue streams rather than these minor incidental ones.
So it prevents excluding otherwise ethical companies just because of tiny, unavoidable overlaps.
Exactly. It's a balance between strict adherence and practical application in the modern world.
That sheds a lot more light on it, and I understand there are even more nuanced exceptions, like for financial institutions or real estate.
Correct. For instance, Islamic financial institutions like Islamic banks or takaful insurance companies.
Takaful, right. That's the risk-sharing model.
Yes, precisely. They operate on principles of mutual guarantee and risk sharing. These can be eligible if they are specifically structured Islamically or are maybe in the process of transitioning to become fully Islamic.
Oh, okay. So there's a path for them.
There is, but they'd need to meet strict criteria, like having a formal board decision to convert, an independent Sharia supervision mechanism, and Sharia approval for their conversion roadmap and new products.
Right. It's not automatic.
Not at all. And similarly, real estate companies classified under Sector 8600 are eligible if their operations and properties, think tenants and their business activities, adhere to Sharia principles.
So if the first hurdle is what a company does, the business activity, the next crucial step is how it manages its money. Once a company passes those sector screens, the deep dive continues into its financial health.
Exactly, through accounting-based financial ratio filters.
This must be where the numbers get really precise.
They do. The primary financial check is the leverage compliance screen.
Okay.
And the key metric here is quite precise. The total interest-bearing debt divided by the company's trailing 24-month average market capitalization must be less than 33%.
Less than 33%. So effectively, less than a third of a company's market value can be tied up in interest-bearing debt.
That's it. It's a remarkably stringent financial health check, ensuring companies aren't heavily reliant on conventional interest-based borrowing.
That 33% sounds like a very firm ceiling. But here's where it gets particularly clever. I thought there's a buffer rule built in.
Yes.
This seems to acknowledge the practicalities of market fluctuations while still maintaining strict compliance. How does that buffer work exactly?
It's a fantastic mechanism, really shows the meticulous effort to ensure ongoing compliance, not just a one-time check.
Right.
Think of it like a company's debt level being on a tight leash. The 33% is the absolute limit for new inclusions.
Got it.
But they've built in this 2 percentage point grace zone. So if a previously compliant company nudges up slightly, say to 34% or even 35%, they don't get kicked out immediately. It's like getting a yellow card instead of a red.
Okay, a warning.
Right. However, if they stay in that yellow zone between 33% and 35% for 3 consecutive evaluation periods.
3 periods in a row.
Correct. Or if they jump beyond 35% at any time, then it's an immediate red card. They're out, non-compliant.
Makes sense. And what if a company was previously non-compliant, but now looks like it's passing the screen? Maybe its debt drops below 33%. Do they get welcomed back immediately?
Not quite so fast. The same principle of caution applies in reverse.
Okay.
If a previously non-compliant stock now passes the screen, meaning it's under 33%, it remains non-compliant if it's still within that 2 percentage point buffer zone. So if it's, say, 31% or 32%.
So it needs to be clearly below the threshold.
Exactly. It only becomes fully compliant and eligible for inclusion after satisfying the ratio being below 31%, basically, for 3 consecutive evaluation periods.
Wow.
It's this clever mechanism ensuring both entry and exit are carefully managed, maintaining the integrity of the index over time.
That level of detail truly highlights the commitment to a consistent, trustworthy standard. It's impressive. And it's worth a quick mention, too, that there's something called a dividend purification ratio provided for investors.
Yes.
What exactly is that for? Is it part of the compliance check?
No, that ratio is a separate optional calculation really meant for the individual investor, not for determining a stock's compliance status for the index itself.
Okay, so it's for the investor's own use.
Right. It's calculated as dividends multiplied by that fraction. Non-permissible revenue divided by total revenue. This ratio helps individual investors determine what portion of their dividends might need to be purified, typically meaning donated to charity if the company has any of that minor incidental non-compliant revenue we talked about, even if it passed the 5% tolerance rule for inclusion.
I see. So it's an extra layer of ethical consideration for the investor personally.
Precisely. It's a good distinction to make.
Okay. Now, when we talk about the Dow Jones Islamic Market Indices, we're not talking about just one single index, are we? It's more like a whole family.
Exactly. It's a comprehensive family, actually. Includes broad market, blue chip, strategy, and thematic indices.
A whole suite.
A whole suite. And what's common across most of them is that they generally employ a float-adjusted market capitalization, or FMC, weighting scheme.
Float adjusted, right, meaning they only count the shares actively traded in the public market.
That's it. Rather than all outstanding shares, it gives a truer picture of what's actually available for investors to buy and sell.
That makes a lot of sense for representativeness. So for the broad market indices, I understand the Dow Jones Islamic Market World Index aims to provide a definitive standard for measuring stock market performance for Islamic investors on a global basis. That sounds pretty comprehensive. Where does this family reach?
It really offers truly global coverage, spanning developed and emerging markets.
Okay.
You'll find indices covering countries from, well, Australia to Germany, Malaysia, the US, the UK.
All the big ones.
Pretty much.
Right.
And there are specific regional indices, too, for the Americas, Asia-Pacific, emerging markets, Europe. It's designed to provide options for investors virtually anywhere.
And these aren't static lists, are they? Global events and market dynamics must lead to changes.
Absolutely. The indices are dynamic. They have to be. For example, Russia was removed back in March 2022.
Right, following sanctions.
Following international sanctions and market accessibility limitations. On the other hand, you had Saudi Arabia promoted to emerging market status in 2019 and then phased into the index.
Okay.
And even more recently, Nigeria moved to a standalone classification in March 2024. These changes just reflect the ongoing need to adapt to global market conditions and, geopolitical shifts.
That gives us a sense of the broad landscape. But what about investors looking for specific niches? Or maybe focusing on the truly massive players in the Shariah-compliant space? That's where the blue chip indices come in, right?
Yes, exactly. These indices focus on the titans of Islamic investing.
Big guns.
The big guns. The Dow Jones Islamic Market Titans 100 Index, for instance, measures the performance of the 100 largest global Shariah-compliant companies.
Okay, top 100 globally?
Yep. And it even has sub-indices for the U.S., Europe, and Asia-Pacific, offering highly concentrated exposure to these top-tier businesses.
And are there even more specialized blue chip indices focusing on specific regions or maybe unique market characteristics?
Indeed, there are. Take the Dow Jones Islamic Market CHI 100 Index, CHIME. It focuses on 100 companies from China, India, and the Middle East and North Africa, MENA regions.
Ah, okay. China, India, MENA.
Right. And beyond Shariah compliance and FMC weighting, it has very strict liquidity requirements. This ensures only actively traded companies are included. For example, you need an average daily value traded of at least $500,000 over 3 months just to be eligible.
Wow, $500 KADVT. That's serious liquidity.
It is. That focus on liquidity really ensures investability. Other examples include the China-Hong Kong Titans 30 and the Malaysia Titans 25. Each has its own specific selection criteria. The Malaysia Titans 25, for instance, even incorporates exclusions determined by Malaysia's own local Sharia Advisory Council.
It's impressive how they've carved out such specific segments within the Shariah-compliant universe. So, beyond broad market and blue chip, I know there are also specialized strategy and thematic indices. What kind of innovative applications do we see there?
Well, these are where Sharia compliance meets specific investment themes or strategies.
Okay.
We're talking about things like the Global Real Estate Index, which includes companies classified under the real estate supersector, provided they pass the Sharia screens, of course.
Right.
Or the Global Technology Titans 50 Index, measuring the 50 largest Sharia-compliant tech companies globally.
What's particularly compelling, I think, is how this framework connects with other ethical investing movements. I'm thinking specifically about the Dow Jones Islamic Market Sustainability Index. How does that one work?
That's a perfect example of synergy. It's really interesting. To be included in that index, companies must be constituents of both the Dow Jones Islamic Market World Index and the Dow Jones Sustainability World Index.
So a double screen. Sharia-compliant and high ESG score.
Exactly. It directly connects Sharia compliance with broader environmental, social, and governance ESG goals. It offers investors a kind of double layer of ethical screening.
That's powerful.
It is. And we also see U.S.-style indices, like growth and value, combining Sharia compliance with those specific investment characteristics. And then there are the capped 5-10-40 indices.
Okay, what do those numbers mean?
5-10-40. Those apply specific capping rules to the weights of companies within underlying Sharia-compliant indices. For example, a single company's weight might be capped at 9%, and the total weight of all companies that individually exceed 4.5% might be capped at 36%. It's all about ensuring diversification.
Got it, diversification rules. So these indices clearly aren't just built and then left alone. They require constant upkeep. We're talking about a dynamic nature that demands regular maintenance and rigorous governance. How frequently are these indices reviewed and adjusted?
It's definitely an ongoing process. Rebalancing generally occurs quarterly for the broad market and strategy thematic indices, usually March, June, September, December.
Okay, quarterly checks.
Yes. For some blue chip indices, like that TA-SHAME 100 we mentioned, there's an annual reconstitution deciding which companies are in or out. But the shares and weights are still rebalanced quarterly. This continuous review ensures they remain accurate reflections of the market and, crucially, their Sharia compliance.
And beyond that scheduled rebalancing, what about everyday corporate actions, things like mergers or delistings, bankruptcies?
Yeah, there's robust ongoing maintenance for all those corporate actions. Delistings, bankruptcies, mergers, takeovers. Changes are typically announced 2 to 5 business days beforehand.
Gives investors some notice.
Exactly, time to react. New Sharia-compliant issues are generally added at the quarterly rebalancing. Companies that no longer pass the Sharia screens or maybe get removed from their underlying benchmark index for other reasons are promptly removed.
Makes sense.
Even spin-offs have a specific rule. They're initially added at a zero price, regardless of Sharia compliance, then they're removed after just 1 day of trading for proper review.
That's quite a lot to keep track of, especially on a global scale. Are there any particularly tricky areas in global markets that require extra vigilance?
Well, one specific detail that stands out, given the unique market dynamics, involves China A-shares.
Ah, the mainland China share.
Right. There's stringent monitoring of the public shares available to foreign investors. Existing constituents can be removed if their practical available limits drop below 4% at a quarterly rebalancing.
4%?
And they're immediately removed if that limit falls below 2%.
Wow, okay. That's tight.
It is. It really shows the practical challenges, in managing these global indices across diverse market structures and regulatory environments.
It's clear that a tremendous amount of oversight goes into this, and overseeing all of this complexity is the Index Committee. Who are they, and what's their role in maintaining the integrity of these indices?
So the Index Committee is composed of full-time professionals from S&P Dow Jones Indices itself.
Okay, internal experts.
Yes. They are responsible for maintaining the indices day-to-day, reviewing all those corporate actions we talked about, and importantly, revising the methodology and policy as needed.
And I imagine their discussions are kept pretty quiet.
Oh, absolutely. Strictly confidential, given the market-moving nature of index changes. What's also notable is that the committee reserves the right to make exceptions to the methodology if circumstances warrant it, but always with proper client notice.
Okay.
And to ensure continued effectiveness and relevance, the entire methodology document, the source we've been drawing on, is reviewed at least once every 12 months.
Right, an annual checkup for the rules themselves. So we've really unpacked how the Dow Jones Islamic market indices provide this globally recognized Sharia-compliant framework for investment.
We have.
From those strict sector and accounting screens, all guided by that Sharia Supervisory Board, to the dynamic maintenance and governance, these indices offer a robust and transparent way to align financial goals with deeply held principles.
And the so what here is pretty significant, I think. These indices are more than just numbers on a screen, aren't they?
Definitely not.
They represented a sophisticated bridge between Islamic ethics and modern finance. They open up opportunities for investors globally who seek both financial performance and adherence to their values.
Yeah.
The precision and the sheer detail in their methodology ensure a clear, measurable standard in what can be a very complex global market. It really proves that strong principles can indeed thrive within modern financial systems.
So thinking about all this, what really stands out to you about the level of detail and the specific criteria required for a company to be considered Sharia compliant and get included in these major global indices? And maybe how might this meticulous, very structured approach influence other areas of ethical investing? Could it perhaps even inspire new ways of defining what makes an investment truly responsible?